Welcome to I Have Something to Say, where unfiltered opinions meet raw authenticity. If you're tired of the same old canned answers and crave genuine conversations about real issues, then you've landed in the right spot. So buckle up for a roller coaster of diverse perspectives. Yours truly, Samí Haiman-Marrero, and my co-host, Chris Majocha, will dive headfirst into topics that impact our daily lives. From the boardrooms to the streets, get ready to hear real people cut through the BS and deliver the discussions you've been waiting for. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of I Have Something to Say. And Chris and I today have a very special guest to talk about one of our favorite topics, which is creating a space for social impact. And so we've invited Michael Houston, who wears many hats, but the two main hats from a professional standpoint is as CEO and founder of Mythix Sound Design. And also he works with Arnold Worldwide, a major advertising and media agency, as a director of social impact. And so welcome, Michael. How are you?
Good. How are you? So nice to meet you. Thank you so much for inviting me into this. I'm really excited to just be here.
Yes. And listen, we all wear many hats. And I just thought, and thank you, Chris, for the introduction, right? That who better than someone that has a foot in both worlds, right? You're an entrepreneur. You have vast experience in sound engineering and in creating content and really telling powerful stories, right? All of that. But then also you work in the corporate sector with major brands, right? And have to navigate that as well. How did you land living this duality? Talk to us. Take us back into how you landed where you are.
I mean, it's an interesting story because you would never expect the work I'm doing now to where I started, because I started out wanting to get into music production, actually. So I wanted to actually create music, work with artists, be an audio engineer, and make beats and stuff at the time. This was 2005. I was coming out of high school in 2004. I was like, I want to live my dreams. My dad was like, that's silly. You don't want to do this. It's not gonna make any money for you. And I was like, I'm gonna follow my dreams or whatever. Then my dad was slightly right when I first started. So went to school at a tech school, an art school, for 3 years to actually study audio engineering. 2007, when I graduated, was during the recession. And that was a terrible time because I could not find a job immediately. Literally, my school was like, here's your student loan payments that you owe. Good luck.
Wow.
And I was super scared because I was 19. I didn't know what I was doing. And at the time, no one tells you, the challenges and nuances that go into following your dreams, the financial part, the student loans, all those things. So I was super naive, but I was like, I want to do this. And I tried to figure it out. I worked at a recording studio for about 11 years. I started out as an intern, worked my way up into being an assistant. And then I was trying super hard to be in the spot as an engineer, working with clients and working with people that are in Hollywood kind of thing. So I went from trying to do music because a friend of mine was like, oh, well, get into doing post-production for television and movies. And I was like, oh, I don't know how to do that. And I learned a little bit about it at school, but I didn't really get into it until I started interning at my position at the studio. And then from there, I learned how to work in post-production. And then along the way, I worked with a lot of producers that work in advertising. So a lot of it was just commercial work with radio and television ads, some stuff with movies doing ADR, audio dialogue replacement, or analog dialogue replacement. But from there, I worked my way to being more on a producer role. And that kind of seemed to fit more. I was kind of becoming the jack of all trades of my company. I knew the ins and outs. And then I eventually got my way up to being executive producer for a little bit because I had some obstacles on the way and it didn't really work out in that favor. So I ended up quitting. And one of the producers I actually worked with through this company was actually working at Arnold at the time. And she was like, come talk to me for a minute. So I wanted to go in for an interview. I started out at Arnold Worldwide as a project manager. And I did it for about, I think, 2 years. That was something that I didn't really love doing that much because it wasn't really in my role of production, because I actually do love production a lot. learned a lot from just the last place I worked at. So I was like, let me not do this anymore. And my boss at the time was like, what do you want to do? Because I mean, you can do anything you want here. And what was great about Arnold is that like they have so many ways of growth and being able to expand. So I was like, I want to get back into production. And I got back to production, but there was like one small thing. We had like a in-house studio that at the time didn't really have a parent. So they're like, you have to play dad here and like basically rebuild it, which is what I did for 2 or 3 years. So was doing production, managing the studio, working with content creators and creatives and being able to like collaborate on a lot of stuff. And then as I went along that way, we had built-in employee resource groups that we're doing at the time. And I got involved into like our Black ERG group and our LGBTQ plus ERG group and doing a lot of really impactful internal programming for our employees. And I got inspired and got very passionate about that. And I think it hit the most when the pandemic happened, where things kind of just fell apart a little bit. People didn't know what to do. I think no one knew what to do. It's like, what do we do in this situation? Because originally we were told 2 weeks, like it'll be fine. And then it ended up being 3 years. So it's like, what are we doing here? So because of that, people were paused to like hear about the issues. And then the BLM movement started blowing up. And then people were realizing, wow, Black people are actually in trouble or having issues what we've had for centuries. And no one didn't notice that. So I took that in my advantage of like, I want to speak up because I identify it with this experience. I identify being in this community. So I wanted to start pushing more, being more passionate, speaking to issues that no one really wants to talk about. I want to make people feel uncomfortable for a minute because I felt uncomfortable my entire life. And getting to that point, I'm now doing more social impact work and also juggling production work. And my spin on it is actually use my production chops to actually infuse social impact. So one of my partners is an amazing photographer, Daniel Urban. I'll call him out because he's amazing.
Yes.
So we've been working together for a couple of years, and like with his talents, we've been able to capture visuals using people in the community and giving them a platform to speak to their issues and their topics, things they want to talk about, their companies, what they're doing in their businesses, and then like interviewing them, doing documentaries around them, doing the amazing photography, giving them like a lift up in the world to show what they're doing on behalf of Arnold. So that's been kind of been my bread and butter in a way. We're just juggling production and social impact work. I realized because I have so many hats, it also comes from challenges of like doing too much work. So I got a little burnt out on the way. So like, I can't do everything. So I've decided to let go of the production world a little bit. I don't want to let go completely because I do have a passion for developing things, making things happen, which still can happen in social impact, but this is a different lane. So now I'm doing this full time. And ever since, it's been a whirlwind. And it's wild how I got here because I originally wanted to create music and work with people and help people in that way. And then I'm helping people in a different way, which feels a lot more impactful in my path.
That's fantastic. And you see how all of these twists and turns just happen, right? You just happen to just do the work.
Yeah.
Toil, work, prove yourself. Also, I admire that you were fearless in just quitting the job that was just not going anywhere, you know?
Yeah.
But the thing is, there's value in letting go too, because sometimes we hold on to things just because we're very comfortable or because we just don't know what's on the other side of that, you know? But having had the opportunity to prove, you know, what value you bring to the table, someone clearly noticed, right? And this colleague then said, hey, ven acá, come over here, right? Let's talk, you know, and look where you're at, and to be in a place where you were able to create, right? This opportunity to do social impact at a whole other level. I mean, I think that's just fantastic. And so talk to us about what that looks like, right? Because I feel, and from different hats too, because as an entrepreneur, as a fellow entrepreneur, I know that there is a certain liberty in being, you know, free from the grasp of, you know, a company or a boss, you know, and just being like a free agent, if you will, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But to be empowered in such a way, to be an intrapreneur in a way, right? In the sense of creating a space for social impact, like how do you do that? And what does that look like? Because I'm sure there are a lot of people that want to do more within, the four walls of their, 9 to 5s or whatever that is, right? And,
Yeah.
are challenged with not being able to or not knowing where to start.
Yeah. I think to me, part of it is built up bravery for me. The social impact work ironically worked out in my favor because I think part of it is like from my last business, the last company I was at the recording studio. And this can go anywhere you go in industry because like it's still an issue of like systemic racism and how things are set up. So me being the only Black person on staff, me being the only queer person on staff, it was a lot harder for me to get any notice or any recognition just to like move up the ladder in the company. So like that felt very frustrating because I know that I was talented. I know I worked hard. I was the first person in the office, last person to leave sometimes. Having to do double the work and feel like you're not making any impact is just super hard. And also working and living in Boston and being in my 20s and like that's already impossible. Like it's already expensive. I'm like trying to make ends meet. I'm hustling just to survive and I'm looking at this as the dream. And I'm like, this is what I went to school for. I studied for this. I worked hard for it. And I feel like I'm being taken steps back. And then as I grew up, realizing it wasn't always me. It's just the systems that we are in that are all broken. So I think like that part of me really got fired up because I was like, I don't want to see the next person coming up in this situation. I want to be able to speak up and say, hey, this is not right. Let's build systems where everyone has an opportunity to show up and have access and to have growth in their careers, not just to be overlooked by biases. So I think for me, the social impact work was because I wanted to step up and say something because it fell in my lap, but I think it fell in my lap for a reason. I think part of it was like I have such a passion for speaking up for other people. And now that I have a platform such as Arnold, it's an opportunity for me to like talk to people in the community that are having similar struggles, similar obstacles, and like saying, hey, we're not the only ones that are having these issues. Look at everyone else here. It's like everyone in the community are also struggling because of biases and because of stereotypes and things that are overlooked, microaggressions, macroaggressions. So I think part of it is because of my own experiences in different jobs and having to deal with being the only one in the room. I think I got tired of it. So I wanted to speak up and say something.
And I'll just say too, I work with Michael at Arnold. I'm a producer there as well. And it's been awesome because he was, working in the producer role, but doing all these things. And just recently, was promoted to this social impact role. But, I often am skeptical of corporate ERGs and how they're run sometimes. It can be very corporatized. And I will say, just like, from observing and the emails and, just in the artwork, like we were saying, working with Daniel Urban and the photography and just the quality of work, but also just the, it resonates with everyone in the agency and it feels like real and genuine. So you can tell, I mean, it's a credit to you, Michael, of just, it's somebody who's not there to fill a position. It's somebody who's like, doing it from the passion and got the position as a result of that. So again, just kudos to you. And it's funny, actually, one of the things I enjoy about this podcast is you get to understand people's stories. And, I know Michael at work, but I didn't really know his backstory. And it's just interesting. Like I actually came up through the did audio engineering, went to school in Orlando for that. And then worked my way up through marketing, quit my job to do a documentary film, start my own production company and stuff. But it's just funny how, I don't know, how our starts in that way and found each other at Arnold here. But I just want to say again, and the work you do with Bagley, I don't know if you want to talk about that at all too, but
absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, Chris, thank you so much. I mean, to hear other people, especially people I work with Chris and Arnold, and like sometimes like it's hard. Like you get feedback, and like sometimes you're the only one in the room. And I will say this: like I've always felt like I'm like a team of one, or like I'm in my own island in anything I do, not just with work. I think part of it is just like being a marginalized person in society. You just feel like you're alone. So I think like I've had to learn how to build that on my own. So like getting feedback for other people to see the work you're doing, you're trying to accomplish and just to spread awareness of things, and also spreading work for good, and also talking about the bad things sometimes, and the things and the realities that like things aren't always easy for everyone in the room, even the people you work with. So like to have you say that is actually like it means a lot, because it feels like I'm accomplishing something, and I'm trying my best, and like sometimes this is hard work, like having to do like work around social impact and like spreading the word around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging is just it's always, falling flat sometimes, or like in one ear out the other. And you feel like it's like, well, why am I doing this? I'm doing it because I want to do it. I think it's important for people like me and people like you and people like everyone around me that look like me or like are similar to me or have similar struggles have an opportunity and equal access to things. So I think like having you say that is just awesome. And it makes me feel like it gives me more fire to keep pushing. I will speak to the other work I do, because I have a lot of hats, and it does sound exhausting, but I do love doing it. So in addition to that, I actually lead as account lead on our nonprofit client, Bagley, which is the Boston Alliance of LGBTQ plus youth. They're a small community center based in Boston. They're the oldest youth-led, adult-supported LGBTQ plus organization in the country.
Wow.
And they've been running for over 40 years, I think almost 45 years next year, I believe. Don't quote me. And I believe they've helped over 40,000 youth the entire time. And I have been such a fan of them since day one. We met, I think 5 years ago, and we were talking through like working with them on their Youth Pride events, which is their version of Pride for the youth that they have. So it's like non-alcohol free, drug free, so everyone can go enjoy it that are underage. And it's very powerful to see these younger people being able to express themselves and be open, and being able to just like connect with other people in the community, and to like have that support from Bagley. They also have free STI testing, free mental health services. They support youth that are homeless or going into homelessness. They just do so much. And for me, the reason why they're not just a great client for me, but they're also a great partner. And I take it to them as my family, because for me growing up, I didn't have like LGBTQ plus like services or resources or a safe space, like growing up in a small town. So I didn't know where to go when I was trying to figure out myself, and when I came out eventually. But to have youth have that access is so great. So I'll always speak highly of them, because they do such impactful work for the community. And because of that, I have been working with them like through Arnold, with doing great awareness around their services and their mission, and like pushing for just having them be seen in a positive way. So like we've done a lot of support with their Youth Pride events, and doing a bunch of activations and experiential events. We also did a big campaign for them called the Audacity campaign, and it helped raise a lot of money for their funding. So all these things have been pretty great to work on. And I think a lot of it's because I have such a passion for community work and being a partner with them.
I love how you lean into your intersectionality, like heavy
Yeah.
leaning, right? Into all of these aspects of your identity and who you are, to really say, yes, I see you, I'm in, right? And say, yes, I see you too, and I'm in, right? And so, I mean, is that not like the start of creating these spaces for social impact? It's almost like looking in a mirror is what I'm hearing, right? It's like you
Yeah.
see it, and it takes you back to what you experienced, right? And so you've grown in this capacity as an entrepreneur, as a business person that's part of the business ecosystem, right? But then
Yeah.
also as an adult, right? That
Yeah.
had overcome the same barriers you're seeing other people facing, right? And so then is that kind of like where it starts happening?
Absolutely. I think part of it is just like these communities, when I was way younger, in my early 20s, when I first came out of the closet, especially the LGBTQ plus community, like they embraced me, because I didn't have support like that in my early 20s or in my teens. So like having that community like embrace me and like protect me and teach me things I didn't know as a kid was so vital to my growth as an adult, that like I wanted to like just like bring it back to community. So like I'm now 37, and I feel like I've grown so much into my personality and into my adulthood and like understanding of the world a lot more clearly. So I think like I've been able to take what I've learned and like enhance it for myself, but also wanted to bring it back to people that are younger than me, that are maybe having similar struggles that I had, that I feel like, you know what, that person's doing some really great stuff on their end. Let me raise them up with the platform that we have by giving opportunities to talk about their stories and talk about their experiences. Like we talked about, I think last year around the drag bands or drag performers, like with Texas and Florida, the Don't Say Gay bill. Like we brought that up. We invited a couple of local drag performers in Boston to speak to their experiences as a drag performer and how scary it's been. Like the fact that people are doing self-defense classes because they're worried about getting gunned down at a club that they work at. Like that's wild to me. The fact that we have to do these measures. So those stories are very important because I don't think people realize like how deep this is until you listen to someone in the community, that this is happening not just in Florida, but also in Boston. Like these are things that are happening here. And talking through with like Black communities about how they're doing with struggles with how they're being treated by their white counterparts, or speaking to the Hispanic community and like how they're trying to build up from the ground up with their work and trying to like hustle and be successful and not have to juggle the nuances of the predominantly white community. Like things like this, like people don't really consider that until you listen to the community. I think part of it, especially the work I do and like the work we do with marketing, is like listening to the people you're marketing to. Like they don't want to have the best product sometimes. Sometimes they want to have like, you know, equal access, healthcare. These are things that people don't really like consider in advertising, because I think we're worried about more about the business. It's business, it's a product. But I think to me, it's like, we got to think beyond that sometimes and focus on community and make it feel authentic and not performative.
Yeah. That's critical. Yeah. I want to say that creating spaces for social impact this way, that it's organic, that it comes within, and it's almost like you're being afforded the space to do so and just be you and just take on, right, these causes or these interests that are for, you know, the benefit of humanity. It's like this bigger thing, right? Really is a complete contrast to what we saw in the aftermath of George Floyd's murder, right? Like it was like, oh my God, we need to do something, right? And then, you know, we have Black Lives Matter movement and all of that kind of like brought it to the forefront, right? It's like all this stuff has been happening for a long, like, you know, time, right? And so you saw all of these companies pretty much say, okay, you, right? You're the darkest person in the room. You must, you know, be equipped, you know, with all of the know-how on how to establish this DEI program, a social impact program, or ERG, or whatever you want to call it, whatever label, right? You want to put on that. And then now, 4 years later, we're seeing how it's coming undone in many cases, right? It's under attack. It's coming undone. It's like these placeholders, right, are now being removed because that's what they, in a lot of instances, that's what it was. And so to me, it's a shame because I see that perhaps had they gone through the process, like your process, right? That is just who's doing the work within, right? It's like identifying that person that's really doing the work, that has a passion for social causes and that's been growing in this space. You know, I think that was perhaps the chip that was missing for a lot of companies in determining what is our step moving forward to be able to implement, you know, our corporate social responsibility initiatives the right way. And so what are your views and impressions about this? Because I feel that the way you've experienced it, right, is more of the authentic, talking about being genuine, Chris, you mentioned it before, right? The more genuine way to do it, right? It's just like, don't put a Band-Aid on an issue that is really like a hemorrhage, right? You can't fix one thing, you know, with lackluster strategy. What are your thoughts on that?
Actually, if you don't mind, I just want to jump in there because Samí, this is exactly how you and I met. I was working in a nonprofit community where we were promoting diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives, and to diversify boards and staff. And one of the big challenges that we found, like, and this is from like a white person, a white male's, point of view. But one of the big challenges we found was that the people, like, just because we were bringing in people of color that fit these different demographics, they weren't necessarily connected to the actual issues in the community that, where we were trying to affect change and create a change in. So there was a disconnect often that even just because you may look or again fill a certain check mark on a box or whatever, that you don't actually understand the work or the background of what it takes to connect with the community that you're supposed to be connecting with. And then until it smacks you in the face, where you have to have that awareness. When Samí came in as a board member for an organization I was working at, and we had diversified our board to a bit, and all of a sudden she started talking, and it was like, well, this is what I'm actually doing, and like this is what I've done, and this is what we're doing next week, and hey, do you want to be part of this? And it was like, wow, there's somebody like on the ground, but also in the boardroom now as well. And that's when Samí, I called you before you left the parking lot, like, hey, we need to meet, because I was like, how do we find more people? I really wanted this change to happen, and it seemed to be falling on or not really working or gaining the momentum. And until somebody like you came in, and it was like, wow, this is how we can create this change. And I feel like, Michael, you are, again, that person as well. You're not coming and saying, hey, yeah, let me look into this. It's, hey, I've done this, I'm doing this. And that's how you're getting the work. So, sorry, I didn't mean to derail that, but it was just.
No, that was great.
No, it's great because it supports, right, this idea of, instead of who look like, right, might be able to do the work, to who is doing the work, right? That's a big difference there. So what's your perspective, on that?
Well, I think to that point, like, I think having someone within an organization that actually has a passion and drive like me is vital. And I think that actually makes it feel more authentic, and it feels like the work will be more serious, because I think hiring an outsider is actually fine. I think you have someone who's trained in DEI, and like they know the operations and how to go about like breaking down a company and like helping them build into a more inclusive space. But I think it doesn't feel as human to me. I think like having someone who works with you that you see on a daily basis, that you're like, wow, I had no idea that you were into this stuff, and also I had no idea that you had these experiences, is actually more effective than having someone from the outside teaching you how to be a better person, or how to like talk to your coworkers, or how to work with your coworkers. So I think like that's actually a plus. Obviously, being a person of color in this position, there are these expectations and responsibilities around like, well, you're a Black person, teach me how to do this. And it's like, I don't have to really teach you, but I'm going to encourage you to learn on your own. Because I think part of it is like, I want to be able to say, Black people have already gone through enough, and there are so many resources online that people can read on their own and understand, not just Black people, but also people of color, and like going beyond what their comfort is. And I've been kind of going on this thing recently about like being comfortable with being uncomfortable. So having to like kind of challenge people to like test their biases and like think beyond their box and think beyond their bubble. It's like something that I think is harder, because like you're feeling vulnerable, you're feeling uncomfortable about it. You're feeling like people are going to judge you because you have different views, which it's okay. Everyone has a right to have different views. But I think how you approach work and how you show up is a different story. So I think like, because I'm in this position, I feel like I have a patch point to speak to it, and have like, have a challenge to like, just like encourage people and not actually teach them directly of like, don't do these things. So I think like, part of my approach is like having conversations. And I think like, it's not just having like presentations of like, this is a bias, or like, this is a microaggression. Like we mix that stuff in to educate. But I think part of it is like actually putting it to the test, like having people like listen to other people's stories and experiences, and getting their perspective, and actually saying like, maybe take a second to step outside of your shoes and see what that's like. Having empathy. That's something that like I've learned through other people, and I've grown from that, because I think like a lot of people don't have empathy for each other. So I think like having that implanted into your daily life on top of your professional life is key, because I think part of it too is um like having that emotion for other people to understand, like, they're not going to show up the right way. They're not going to understand this. They're not going to always have a good day. They're not going to come in 100% all the time. Um, so yeah, I think like, in my opinion, it's more so just me, because I have a passion for it, for helping people. I want to be able to push that as like a way to like just encourage people to learn on their own. If that makes sense. I'm not sure that actually answers your question.
Totally. Yeah. And so grace, right? What role does grace to fall into all of this, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think grace is like another thing that like I tie into. Like for me with work, like I think for any industry, for advertising, everything is go, go, go. It's like you had to get it done. Like look at like people working on the Super Bowl ads this year. Like I'm imagining like working them all night, all night work. Oh my gosh, sorry. All-nighters.
Yes, I get it. The overnighters. Yes.
Overnighters, and being able to like happen to work weekends and long hours, and like it's stressful. So I think when you have people who are asking to get things done immediately, for me, it's like I say like, find the time to work on it, but like work on yourself first.
Mhm.
Take the time you need. It's not always like brought up as like, providing grace. I think grace ties into everything. I think if you can find it, do it. But I feel like having those emotions is important in like the workforce. For me, it's like I like wearing my emotions on my sleeve. Some people find that as a weakness. I think it's a strength. I think having to show up and talk about your personal issues sometimes, if you feel comfortable doing it, is like a good way to like be a leader in a situation, to say like, I have flaws. It's okay. I've grown from them. I learned from my mistakes, and it makes me a stronger person. So that's how I see it. I think like having that emotion in the workplace is super vital to having a functional environment.
Yeah. I love that. Can I tell you something? I mean, it's part of also being part of collective societies, right? When you're, in a collective society that suffers so much, and that you have to rely on the tribe, right? To just get through the day, period, sometimes, right? I feel that wearing your emotions, and being open about your emotions, is just so part of our day to day, that now that we have more of a presence in corporate environments and in business and all of that, I mean, you can't help but see it infiltrate, right? It's almost like, it's like osmosis, right? It's like just it connected. And so then now I'm in this space. So I'm bringing all of me into this space, right? And so do you see that as we become more of a new global majority, right? That these vulnerabilities, that these ways to navigate professional environments are going to shift? Are you seeing a shift?
I'm seeing a shift on mine, at least. I would hope for that to be the same for everyone. I think the pandemic definitely changed a lot of things. I mean, obviously, it changed business entirely. Like, look how we're working now. Like, we're working remotely. Like, I can talk to you over my computer versus having to travel to see you to do a live in-person podcast. Like, these are such different nuances. But also, emotions have changed. I think, like, you saw people not being able to go get haircuts, not being able to, like, have their kids go to a babysitter. Like, they're juggling kids while they're working, and you're seeing it on camera in meetings. Like, you can see that person literally breaking down. Like, they're like, I'm so sorry, I'm having a hard day. And that's the first time I've seen people, my own colleagues even, like, just saying like, I'm human. I'm not this person you see that, has it all together, like, for 9 to 5. Like, sometimes I have my hard times. And I think it's actually really great to see. Like, it changes your perspective on people you work with, people that you know. It's like, wow, like, I thought this person was just like not like, not a great person, or like not in the happiest person, but you realize like they have all these emotions, all these things going on. So it's like, I think that really opened up like vulnerability and like having emotion. I obviously, emotion can be hard in a corporate environment. Like, obviously, you're trying to work with clients, you're trying to be professional the whole time. But I think it's okay to sometimes like let your guard down a little bit to be like, I'm not feeling 100% today. I'm coming in at like 60% because I'm having a rough morning, or like I'm depressed. It's the winter. Like, I think naming that in the beginning of your meetings, being like, as soon as you walk in the door, I think it's okay to say that, because, you know, not everyone can be 100% all the time. It's so exhausting. People are always like exhausted today. Even for me, like I'll work all day and then just like let my guard down. I'm like, oh my gosh, that was such a long day. Not because of the work, because like you're just having these emotions that you're trying to keep built up. Cause like, if you think about the reality, is like we're living in like really crazy times right now. Like the world is crazy. Like, and for us to go into the office and be like, let's talk about this thing for 30 minutes. And it's like, but there are things happening outside these walls. Like there's like war, there's like all this chaos happening in our country. There's like things around politics. It's like people can't come in and like expect you to be like all holly jolly ready to go. Like I'm ready to do that and expect them to like, you know, and then they like be fine. Like there's a lot. So I think like to this point of like the pandemic definitely opened it up. I think I do see that progressing in my role, at least. I think like it's okay to share those emotions. I think it's okay to like get uncomfortable and like be okay with it and build safe spaces to talk about it. Cause I think part of my approach on what I do is like building safe spaces to have these conversations and like having a minute to let your hair down and not feel judged.
Yeah.
So I think it's progressing for sure.
Yeah. And so what does that look like? Is it more like one-on-one, or is it set time during the week, or is it a combination of all of those things? Yeah. Just to give us an idea. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a combination, but I think the biggest thing is like sometimes like I do these things called Let's Talk About, where we like, I've never made this program myself. It's always been a thing we've established, but Let's Talk About is talk about anything. So really it's like topics in pop culture, or even serious topics. Like we used that forum heavily during the pandemic, talking about like what was happening with BLM and the shootings and police brutality, and also things happening in the pandemic. Like we were all just like, how do we work like this, knowing that we're stuck at home, we can't see anyone, we can't see our families, all like we're with our families 24/7. We're not able to see our friends, we're wearing masks all the time. Like that was so stressful. And like having to just work on a laptop on camera for like 9 to even 14 hours a day, like it's not sustainable. So obviously people wanted to talk about it, and like having these spaces really made the difference. I think part of it was like people felt like they weren't, you know, alone in the situation, because like you're by yourself most of the time during the pandemic. All you have is like your media and your gadgets to like know what's happening in the outside world, but like the outside world feels like it's a doom. So having to talk about it, like, we would have these scheduled times together, and like, it would be like in maybe an hour, and talking about that stuff too. But I think like part of it is like just building a space to say like, we can have conversations openly, you know, even as a corporate company. I think like there's a stigma with corporations where like, you don't want to talk about these things because like, it's all about business. It's like, you don't have to do that. I think if you set up your employees for success in a way where you can talk openly about topics that like, you know, they relate to, and talk about issues that are happening that relate to, that you support, I think that helps them open up and actually work harder, work better, and like it improves their mental health. So I think there's so many things that people don't realize with like social impact work, is that like, yes, we're having conversations, and yes, they can get emotional. It's not all frou-frou. It's not all kumbaya. It's not all like peace stuff. It's all stuff that we can talk about. It's that can be either light or heavy. But I think part of it is like the growth in learning and how that impacts your day to day, that helps improve your work and how you show up to the office. I think these are all things that like improve everything as a company.
And I'll just say, I think it improves the, you know, the overall appeal and draw to the business as well. I mean, me coming into Arnold, you know, after the pandemic, I mean, well, I guess the pandemic still sort of going on, but you know, and you know, I wasn't there for those engagements, but I think just the people and the environment that is so open makes, you know, oftentimes work, it seems like, oh, well, I'm going to go to work and then I got to go find like a safe place outside of work to go vent and decompress and stuff. And it's really cool to have a place where you're like, hey, I can go to work and, you know, get my release there or vent there and know that I'm in a safe space. It's, it just, you know, that's business. It's caring about people. And, you know, something you both clearly do very well, but it's, it's what draws an employee. It's not about just clocking in and clocking out. You have to manage people, and then people manage the tasks of the business. And at the end of the day, if people aren't heard or don't feel like they have a safe space, it's just going to translate and resonate to everyone else and just create a toxic environment. And I'm not just here promoting Arnold, but I think just businesses in general that do that and have these resources and people like Michael, and there's it just makes it a great environment to also do great work, and makes everybody happy doing that together. So
yeah, and I'll just add to that too, just to say not to toot my own horn on anything, or just to promote Arnold in a way, but I think having someone in this kind of work already established is a huge plus for an organization. I think having someone just put in as we need to do this quickly because it doesn't look good for us. It's I think if you plant the seed, ahead of your plans, this is a way to grow your business properly and effectively versus having to do it as a performative way or to do it for clout. So I think a lot of companies, especially during BLM, they're oh, I'm here to stand by. They had their BLM posts up. They would donate here and there, but they weren't showing up to the protests. They weren't supporting Black businesses. They weren't talking about issues. They weren't being allies or advocates. And you see it now where a lot of companies or a lot of organizations still are kind of backing off of that stuff. And silence is definitely a very impactful thing for people. Not saying anything is saying something.
Yep.
It's saying that you're not supporting it. You're not doing anything about it. And I think we're past the point of I'm not saying anything because I'm afraid to say something. We're past that point. We've done all these trainings. We've done all this research. There's so much news coverage about everything we've learned from BLM that there's no excuse for that anymore. I think either you support it or you don't. And we're in a space now, especially with social media, you get called out so easily for those things. So I think having these things planted is a great way to just make things more impactful for not just you, but also your company, and also just everyone in general.
Yeah. Can I tell you? I mean, I could go on talking about this topic and listening to you, but these are my key takeaways. Okay. Number one, if you are not being seen and heard, right, there's a place for you elsewhere. So that's the first thing, right? So then find your tribe, move, because that means you're not in the right place, right? It's that simple. Number two, be genuine. As long as you lead with your heart and you're genuine, people will see that. People will see you. People will open doors for you, and you'll be able to really work on your purpose, right? And with purpose in everything you do, whether it's business or just social impact. And the other thing that really resonates with me is lean in on your facets of all of the facets, all of you, right? All of the facets of your identity and your intersectionality. And that's just really powerful just as a person, right? If everybody in the world would do that, I mean, imagine that. So many leaders and just knowing that you're going to grow into it organically, right? If you do those things, move to where you're needed and where you can make a difference, right? Because sometimes you just have to get out of those environments that don't connect, that don't want to listen. Let somebody else deal with that, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. and then just be genuine and leaning in on your intersectionalities. I think that's just really, really, a great way, right, to wrap up, this really amazing and captivating, right, journey that you've had and that you still have, because you're only 37, you mentioned?
Only 37, yeah.
And we're just starting, baby,
Yeah.
So this is really awesome. Michael, it's so great to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much.
Yes. And just looking forward to continuing, right, this conversation.
Absolutely. I feel to your point, we could talk, this could be a whole 12-week series because there's so much to dig through. So I look forward to just talking more about this kind of topics. And thank you for just having me here. And it's such an honor to just speak to this work, because I think I I appreciate it because it's something that I've always been passionate for. And like what Chris mentioned before is that like, I didn't just like get hired. Like I kind of earned this spot because I was so passionate about it and people were seeing the work that was coming out of it. So I think like for me, it's like anything that comes up, I'm just happy to be here for it. And for me, it's like people are like, oh, you're a big deal now. It's like, well, no, I understand that. But for me, it's like, I'm just like you. I'm going to be your partner, not your manager or your like employer. Like that's not how I want to be seen. I don't want to be like your superior. I see you as an equal, in my opinion, meaning like we're partners in this together. Like we're working together to like do great work. So I'm really, it's an honor to be here. So thank you.
And I think that just goes to show, and, again, wrapping everything up here with, it goes to being a good person. People, you are a likable person, an approachable person. You do wear your emotions on your sleeve, which, again, is a good thing because people just know who you are and know what they're going to get when they talk to you. And I think that is, in addition to the great work that you're doing, is what makes people actually, open the email first because say, hey, Michael sent this. So like, let me see what he's saying, and then get drawn into the great work. So keep it up, man. You're doing awesome.
Try not to cry because it's actually great to hear. Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you for it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you. It's such an honor. Thank you. It's such a pleasure.
This concludes this episode of I Have Something to Say. Thank you for tuning in, and tell your friends to find us on YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes. And remember, if you have something to say, it's time to show up and speak up.